Let's think about something for a second. The water you use today, to brush your teeth, grab a drink, flush the toilet, it's so easy to take it for granted, right? But what if I told you that this simple, everyday resource is at the heart of a huge global crisis? Well, today we're diving deep into the freshwater crisis. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's just start with a number, a huge one, 2 billion. That's the number of people who, by the year 2050, are projected to not have access to clean, safe drinking water. 2 billion. This isn't some far-off problem for our grandkids to solve. This is happening right now, and it's getting worse. So the big question is, why? Why is this happening?
So yeah, our first big question has to be, where is all the water going? In this first part of our explainer, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty and look at all the things that are shrinking our supply of this incredibly precious resource.
Now, before we go any further, there's a key term we've got to understand: aquifers. The easiest way to think about an aquifer is like a giant, natural, underground sponge. It's made of rock and sand, and it soaks up and holds incredible amounts of fresh water. We drill boreholes down into them to pump that water up. The problem? We are draining these natural water tanks way, way faster than the rain can possibly refill them. You see, the pressure on our water supply, it's coming from all over the place. It's this really complex web of issues. Everything from massive dams and the wrong kind of trees being planted, right down to leaky pipes in our cities and the way we grow our food. Let's break down a couple of the really big ones. So, dams. This is a really interesting one, because they're kind of two things at once. On one hand, they're incredible feats of engineering, right? They give us water for our cities and farms, they can stop destructive floods, and they even generate clean electricity. But, there's always a but, on the other hand, they totally change the environment. They can destroy habitats downstream, mess with water quality, and block fish from migrating. It's a classic case of a human solution that has some pretty serious consequences for nature.
Okay, so if aquifers are the sponges under the ground, wetlands are the sponges right on the surface, and they are so important. They suck up huge amounts of rainwater, which stops floods. Then, they release that water slowly during the dry seasons, which stops droughts. Oh, and they also clean the water for free. So when we get rid of wetlands to build things or to farm, we're basically destroying one of nature's most perfect water management tools.
And then you have this. Just pure waste. Get your head around this for a second. In some cities, 40%, 40, of the clean, treated water supply never even makes it to a house. It just leaks out of old, broken pipes and soaks into the ground. I mean, that is just a staggering amount of precious water being lost for absolutely no reason.
So that's the problem of quantity, not having enough water. But that leads us to an even bigger, scarier problem, the problem of quality. Because, having access to water doesn't mean much if that water is toxic and makes you sick. This is the second major front in the water crisis.
To really get the quality crisis, we have to talk about something called eutrophication. I know it's a big, sciencey word, but the idea behind it is actually pretty simple. It's what happens when you overfeed a river or a dam with too many nutrients, stuff that usually comes from fertilizers and sewage. And this kicks off a really dangerous chain reaction.
Let's walk through this cycle step by step. First, you get all these extra nutrients washing into the water. Second, the algae in the water go crazy. They feast on these nutrients and just explode into what we call an algal bloom. You know that thick green slime you sometimes see on a dam? That's it. Third, that thick mat of algae blocks all the sunlight from getting to the healthy plants underneath, so they die. And fourth, all the bacteria that chow down on the dead plants, they use up all the oxygen in the water.
And what you're left with is a dead zone. With no oxygen left in the water, the fish, the insects, everything, they literally suffocate. The water becomes lifeless and toxic. A beautiful, healthy ecosystem is basically choked to death, all because we overfed it with our pollution.
So where does all this bad stuff come from? Well, if you look at the list, the sources are pretty much all around us. It's in the soap and detergents from our homes, the pesticides from farms, the toxic chemicals from factories, the waste from mines, you name it. Almost everything we do in our modern lives can end up polluting our water.
Now this one, acid mine drainage, or AMD, is especially nasty. It's like a toxic ghost that mines leave behind. Water flows through these old mine shafts, it dissolves minerals, and it becomes super acidic and full of heavy metals. This toxic sludge can then leak into our rivers and groundwater for hundreds of years. And pollution isn't always a chemical from a factory. Sometimes
It looks like this. This is the water hyacinth. It's an invasive species, and it absolutely loves water that's full of nutrients from pollution. It grows into these super thick, dense mats that choke up entire rivers, block sunlight, and yep, you guessed it, they kickstart that whole horrible process of eutrophication we just talked about.
Okay, I know, that was a lot, and it can all sound pretty overwhelming. But this is where we pivot. This is where we start talking about the solutions. Because there is hope and there are real practical things we can do to make every single drop of water count. And check this out. This is a fantastic example of the basic principles of water purification. You can actually build this at home or in a classroom. You just layer simple stuff, gravel, sand, charcoal, and it physically filters out the gunk. Of course, and this is the really crucial part, you always have to boil the water after filtering it to kill all the germs and make it truly safe to drink. This quote right here really hits the nail on the head. A lot of the time, it's not that the water isn't there. It's that the water we have is just too polluted to use. And that's exactly why cleaning our water, and even more importantly, recycling it, is such a game changer. If we can clean the water we've already used, we can tackle both the quality and the quantity problem at the same time. And I mean, just look at the benefits. When you recycle water, you're not dumping polluted water back into rivers, so that's a win. You're not draining our aquifers, so that's another win. You create a water source that's basically drought-proof, and over time, it's actually cheaper than constantly finding and treating new water. It's just a win-win-win-win.
So, we've talked about the big picture, the dams, the farms, the industries, but the solution isn't just out there. It's right here, with us, in our homes, in our schools, in our communities. Every single one of us has a part to play in this.
And that leads to the most important question of all, doesn't it? It's easy to feel kind of small when you're looking at a problem this huge, but you've got to remember that small actions, when they're multiplied by millions and millions of people, create a massive wave of change. So, what can you do?
Look, here are some really simple but really powerful places to start. Turn off the tap when you brush your teeth. Think about what you're pouring down the sink. Never dump chemicals down the drain. Maybe even convince your parents to use the gray water from the bath on the garden. But honestly, the most important thing you can do is just to stay curious and keep learning. And a great place to do that is with Mr. Chi.
Seriously, if you found this breakdown useful and you want to learn more about this stuff and a whole bunch of other important topics, you should definitely go and follow Mr. Chi on all these platforms. He's got tons of great content that'll help you keep learning.
And finally, from our side, if this explainer helps you get your head around the water crisis, please help us spread the knowledge. Share it with your friends, give it a like, and make sure you subscribe for more essential explainers just like this one. Thanks so much for watching.